The smell of roasting chicken, the scent of noodle pudding, the crunchiness of a freshly baked kickel. Join us for the aromas and taste of a truly traditional dinner. Shalom, and welcome to my kitchen. I'm Eenie Frost, and I was thinking about a really traditional dinner when I was walking through the kosher meat market the other day. And I met a girl who said to me, Eenie, she says, I know you're Eenie. I said, you're right. She said, I was going to have some cousins who haven't been here for maybe 25 years. They're coming with their wives, their husbands, their children. She said, and I thought it would be fun to make something that was a remembrance of the times we used to be together when we were children. And I said, that's marvelous. Don't make anything different. Make what you remember. That's the wonderful part. It's what we want you to remember. Not only the values, the morals, the things that we teach to our children, but so many of these traditions that begin in the kitchen and stay with us. But I said, wait a minute. Before you make your chicken, you've got to use a new twist. Something new and tangy. I have a great idea. Margie, who was standing on the other side of the butcher shop, came over and said, Eenie, here's a great idea with Dijon mustard. And I think you're really going to like it. So we all ended up walking out of there with a package of chicken breasts. And here I have 4 chicken breasts. And as you know, the first thing I'm always going to say to you is take off that skin. You do not need it. Maybe you grew up with the cholesterol, but your children are not growing up that way, and they're not going to miss it because we're going to put such tangy, wonderful things on it that you don't need it. So take off the skin right away, wash off your chicken breasts, and when you put them in the pan, always put the heaviest side to the outside, especially if you're going to do this in the microwave. If you're going to do it in the oven, it isn't so necessary, but it still is a good idea. And now we're going to make a wonderful mixture. First, we're going to take a cup of parsley. And of course, I just took this right out of our garden this morning. And oh, there's a difference. It's easy and it's simple to really make it. And it has a wonderful flavor. It tastes good and it smells good. And here we have a half a cup of Dijon mustard that we're going to mix with the parsley. And you can see already what a good flavor that's going to give it. And of course we have garlic. None of that garlic powder now. Fresh is best, you know what I always say, and it's very simple. Mix that in. And in order just to loosen this a little bit, you can use wine. However, I'm using a half a teaspoon of orange juice. Now then, take your mixture and just spread it onto your chicken. And I think a good way to do it is to use a brush, or just any kind of a spatula would be fine, and just brush it right on. Put about 1/4 of the amount onto a chicken breast and just spread it on. Now you can see how good this is going to make it because it has a wonderful flavor to it. And here we're going to spread it on, all 4 of them, because this parsley that is already mashed up with the garlic and with the, oh, I can smell this mustard. It's marvelous. So I know that you're going to like this. Now then, that is part of the topping, but there's more, and I think this is really going to get to you. You know, this doesn't have any skin, so you want something that's going to be kind of crunchy to give it kind of a skin feeling. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a whole potato. Don't even feel it. Well, what's wrong with the peeling? It's very nutritious, the best thing you can do. And just grate it. Grate your potato all the way down. Of course, if you have those fancy graters, but this belonged to my grandmother, Oliver Sholem, may she rest in peace, who always used this grater, and so as far as I'm concerned, this is still the best one around. Now then, put that in a dish. And I think that this too needs a little bit of oil. In fact, I think I like olive oil in this. Take about a teaspoon of olive oil just to soften this down. That's about all that it will need. Mix it in, and we're going to use this as a topping. And this will become a coating, because when you put it in the oven, you're going to bake it for about 30 minutes. But after it bakes, turn it under the broiler for about 5 minutes. And you'll see that will give it a crunchiness as if it has a skin on it or a topping on it. You can see the coloring. The parsley still shows through. Well, that's all right, because that is going to make it look nice. And you can see how this potato lays right on the top of it. So we'll put this in the oven for about 30 minutes. And when it comes out, I'll show you how nice it looks. We have it in the oven right here. And of course, if you have one of my oven pulls, you know that that's the way to pull it out so that you don't burn your hand every time you open the oven. And here it is when we take it out, and we'll put in our new one. And you can take your oven pull and just push it back in, because that oven is hot. We don't want to burn our hands. Now look at how nice it is when it comes out. You can see that it has the topping and the crunchiness on it. And it's really very simple, and a wonderful little twist on traditional chicken. I hope that you'll try this one.
For a copy of Enie's recipes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Enie's Kitchen in care of WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. That's Enie's Kitchen, WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Please include the show number with your recipe request.
Someone said that kugel is Jewish pasta. Well, perhaps in a way that's right, because many times when I do demonstrations at department stores and people come in, I will hear Oriental people who will say to me, Eenie, we use rice as a noodle base. Or Italian pasta may be made a little bit differently. I remember when my mother-in-law, Sholem, may she rest in peace, used to take the noodle dough and put it out across the whole table. And I think this is one of the most beautiful remembrances Jack has of his mother. He said he would walk in from school, and there she was pulling the noodle dough across the kitchen table and then cutting it. Well, today we don't do that, but we do wonderful things with kugel. We take the pasta dough, which is what we call parov. That means that there's nothing in it that either has a milk or meat product, so we could use it either way. And we cook up these wonderful kugels. If we were making a milchik dinner, we would probably use something like cottage cheese or sour cream. But since this is going to be with a meat dinner with our wonderful Dijon chicken, we are going to make a different kind of a kugel. It's called apple butter. Oh, now don't get nervous because I'm saying butter. It's only called apple butter. It does not have any butter in it. You know that I wouldn't use butter if we were going to make something that was made with meat. And it's really fun to make. So let's make the apple butter first. We're going to take about 3 pounds of apples. And it's very simple to just take the core out. If you have a core like this, it's so easy to work with. Take out the core, take your knife, and just cut it into some nice slices. Let's try to remember that we don't want to get the seeds in it, so please pull out the seeds before you do that. But leave the skins on. Put them in, and I'm not even going to put this in with water. I've got 2 cups of apple cider, and this is going to give it a delicious flavor. I started cooking this a little bit because I wanted you to see how it looks once we start to cook it. Do you see the firmness? Now this is going to soften up. Allow this to cook until it softens. It'll take about a half an hour. Then take it out of here and put it through your food mill. this is a wonderful gadget. You know, I'm not big on your buying 9,000 gadgets because there's no room, but this one is really wonderful. Put the apples through here, and this will take the skins off. Then put it back into your pot. And with this, we're going to add some delicious spices. You know, spice is the thing that really picks up apples in anything that you're going to make. First, we're going to add a cup of sugar into our apples. And then, oh, you know me and cinnamon, right? We're always on to cinnamon with whatever we make. Well, here we have a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon. And Grandma Jenny always said, whenever you do anything with apples, be sure you use a little nutmeg. Not too much to make it overpowering. Just that little hint. No one will ever know the difference, and they'll wonder what gives it that pizzazz. I have 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, and here I have a 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. That is a nice flavoring for it. And you know, you can use all of these in apple pie, too. That also is a good flavoring for it. And here we have a 1/2 teaspoon of cloves. Now let this cook again for about 30 minutes. And when it's done, you'll see it's going to look like this. Doesn't this look wonderful? And it really has a nice flavor. So we're going to use some of that in our apple kugel, which you're going to see how we're going to put it together. And if there's any apple butter left, I think you're going to love eating it just as it is or as a relish. Because apple butter is used on bagels, you can use it on crackers, you can use it with appetizers. It's really a fun thing to use. So to make our kugel, I have a pound of noodles. And for this, I really like the curly ones. You know, those big, heavy, curly ones? I think that gives it a good flavor. But you can use whatever kind you like. Different kugels, I think, take kind of different types of noodles. This one, I've always used this one, probably because it was used by my mother-in-law. Now, when you mix this up a little bit, you'll see that it's pretty firm. We've cooked this down. So I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of par of margarine. When you buy your margarine, it's marked on the outside whether the margarine, because you know some margarine does have milk products in it. So you have to check your labels all the time. And we're going to add a cup of sugar to it. And of course, we got to use that teaspoon of cinnamon. We can't do anything without that, because that's what's going to dress up our wonderful noodles. In fact, it gives it a little dark look, but that's all right. That's fine. And we're going to add 1 egg. Now, you know, when we use an egg, we always check for the kashrut. Be sure there isn't any blood in it, because if there were, it would not be acceptable under the laws of kashrut. That meant that there was some life that was starting in it, and we couldn't use it. So we always check our eggs. You know, that's a good thing to do anyway, because the old story about 1 rotten egg can ruin your whole cake if you just dump it in anyway. So really do that all the time. You'll find it's much safer and a better thing to do. Now then, to start making our kugel, I have the most popular and most used pan of any in the whole cooking market, the 9x13 pan. And when you buy a microwave or something, please be sure that your 9x13 always fit into it, because that's what you're going to be using the most. And I'm going to put 1/2 of the noodles in here and just spread them down. And then we'll cover that with a 1/2 of our apple butter. This, a recipe that I gave you, is going to make about 3 cups. So we'll spread about 1/2 of our apple butter over it. And then to give it a little flavor, and this is optional, I have about a 1/2 cup of nuts here. I'll pour some on. And then we'll put the rest of our noodles over it. And then we will top it again with the rest of our apple butter. But I think I'm going to have a little left here. So what I'm going to do with it is just pour it in our little dish, and we'll have it for a little nosh when Jack and the children walk in. I know they'll be smelling it, and they'll be wanting to have a little bit, so we will give them a treat. That's always the fun part, isn't it? When the children walk in from school, you like to have something that's right there that they can have some of immediately. And the rest of the nuts. And if you want to take a fresh apple, just slice it up and perhaps just decorate it a little bit. Now this will bake for about a half an hour, or you can make this in advance. You know, for you're making it for Shabbos or for Saturday night, you really want to make something that you'll have in advance. So just put a little of your apple in the middle, maybe just decorate it a little bit like this. And after it goes in the oven for a half an hour, you'll take it out and we'll see how nicely it's going to look. And if we take our puller especially, because I don't want to burn up my hands, I'll show you how nice it looks with it. And I'm going to let this stay in the oven, stay warm, while we make our vegetable. You know, if you're having a party, sometimes it's a problem with the vegetable because you're using your oven for your chicken, for your kugel, maybe your appetizer, and it's really quite a problem. So you want to try to make something that you can make on the top of the stove. And that really is not as difficult as you might think. It really is much easier. So we're going to make something that will have, as you can imagine, fresh vegetables, because you know, if you cook with me all the time, that I always say fresh is best. And I love fresh vegetables. They're just so easy to work with. So we're going to heat a little oil. First, I'm going to put in it a clove of garlic, naturally. That's what we always have to start with, is a nice clove of garlic. And after that goes in, we'll take an onion that has been sliced and add that to it and let that cook down a little bit. Then I have broccoli, and I'm going to call this party broccoli, only for that reason, that if you want to make something on top of the stove instead of putting everything in the oven, this is a nice thing to make. So here we have our broccoli, and I have a half of a red pepper. Oh, this will give it a nice color, because we want to do that. And Devorah Heller, who's helping, has been here since early this morning, said, Eenie, I have a fantastic idea about slicing those mushrooms. I said, what are we going to do? She says, all you do, you remember that old egg slicer? I said, I don't have it anymore because I put everything in the food processor. She said, take it out. So she brought her egg slicer, and if you put your mushroom in it, look at it. Now, is that nice and even? What a cinch. I can't believe the whole thing. Devorah, that's a fabulous idea. So we're just going to take our mushrooms, put them right in, and set them in the pan. And I think that's really a wonderful idea. So we have about 8 ounces, I would say, of mushrooms that we're going to put in with it. And we will stir it around and let it set. If you want to use a little oregano or something, nothing too sharp. Because after all, this is a vegetable that's going to go with our traditional dinner, and we have so much mustard in the chicken already. We don't want to put too much in it. This is a delicious, delicious kind of a vegetable. It'll be nice and green and red. The colors will be wonderful. And I think that you'll enjoy it with the kugel and the apples. This is what I'm going to call party broccoli, because I think that it's going to set up nicely in the kind of a dinner that will have the chicken and the kugel and the vegetable.
For a copy of Enie's recipes, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to Enie's Kitchen in care of WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. That's Enie's Kitchen, WJUF, 1 South Franklin Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Please include the show number with your recipe request.
What kind of a dessert would we have with a traditional dinner? Kichel, of course. And when I talked to the girls about it the other day and asked them if they ever made kichel, they all started out with the same first 2 words, I remember. Everybody remembered a moment at their grandparents' home, at their cousin's home, perhaps in going to synagogue with their grandparents afterwards when they went in to have a cookie. They always looked for the kichel. This is a very traditional thing that's been made for many, many generations. And some of the girls call it Eier kichel. Eier means eggs, because you have to use eggs in kichel. But the important thing is that it must be aerated. When you eat them, it's like nothing. It's like air. So in order for us to be sure they're completely aerated, I really think we have to use the Mix Master. because it's going to have to set in here for quite a long time. Now what we're going to do, first of all, in the Mix Master, we're going to use 3 eggs. And we will check them first to see that they are acceptable and put them into our Mix Master. We have 3 eggs. And when you put them in, just start it for 1 moment, just to mix them up for a second. Then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar. And would you believe this when I'm going to tell you that we're going to let this set for 15 minutes on the Mix Master. But first we're going to add a 1/2 cup of oil. And this is going to go for 15 minutes. At the end of 15 minutes, then we're going to add a cup of flour and allow that to beat in for another 5 minutes. So you can see how long this is going to go. But that's what's going to give it the good flavoring and the good feeling, because that's what pickle has to be. Now then, when the dough is set after 20 minutes, it's really going to look like this. This is really what it's going to look like. And this is a very nice, soft dough. And I said to Devorah when we were putting things together, you know, it's very confusing. Some of the new measuring spoons are in various shapes. They have to be very artistic. Well, give me back the old rounded tablespoon. That's the one I rely on the most. Take your rounded tablespoon and take a little bit of your dough. It'll be a little sticky. And then just set it onto a greased, in this case it really must be greased, cookie sheet. And they will come out in rounded, is the way we want them to set. So be sure that you take a round tablespoon and pull them off. And they don't spread too much, a little bit, so you should leave a little bit of room when you put them on your cookie sheet. And we did grease this. You can either spray it. You know, the sprays are kosher now, so they're really wonderful to use. And then I'm going to put a little cinnamon and sugar on it. But you know, when I was in the supermarket, I was looking and see that they sell the cinnamon and sugar. And it's so expensive, it's ridiculous. Take one of your old jars that you have from something else and just put some cinnamon and sugar in it. And if you're like me, you're going to put a great deal of cinnamon, because you know I'm big on that. So just sprinkle it with a little cinnamon and a little sugar and put this in the oven for about from 20 to 25 minutes. You're going to have to watch them because the bottoms get a little dark, but that's all right. Because what you want to happen is that you want them to kind of fold up underneath. And look at how nice they are. You see how they came up? And if you look on the sides, you'll see that the inside of it kind of sets up. But that happens because of the aeration that we have beat it for so long. And I hope that you'll try them, because kichel are really fun. They're interesting, they're very light. And it's something that you can keep in that cookie box on the top of the refrigerator, you know, when people come in and they want to take a nash of something. Well, give them a chance on some kichel. I was thinking really about some of the wonderful traditions that are a basic part of Judaism. And I think one particular, there's one word, a very definitive word, a beautiful word, called a tzaddik. A tzaddik is a wise person, somebody who you really respect, who has the knowledge and the wisdom. And in Hebrew, every word has a root. And within the root of tzaddik come many words. And one is tzedakah. Now you have probably heard of tzedakah in terms of charity. But you know what? It truly means righteousness, because it comes from tzaddik. And when you think about it, the relationship between giving and righteousness is obvious. And when I was talking to Rabbi Light the other day, we picked up the Pentateuch. This is the 5 books of Moses. And in Deuteronomy, it's very explicit. In the Bible before that, it tells us that we must give. It's not a whim, it's an obligation, it's a responsibility that all of us have. That there is something called tithing, that each person gave 1/10 of what they had, and not more than 1/5, because you shouldn't give too much so that you would suffer. And of course, being an agricultural society, always remember that everything they spoke about had to do with the agricultural life. And one of the things that they're saying, and I thought was really interesting, when you shake the fruit from your olive trees, do not go over it again, but leave the rest for the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. When you reap the harvest in your field and you overlook a sheaf, do not go back. Leave it for the stranger, the widow, and the fatherless. When you gather the grapes of the vineyard, do not pick it up again. Leave them for the stranger, the fatherless. And this is a part of the giving that we've always done. But in recent generations, instead of doing this, we take the money into what we call a pushka or a pushki. Now, there are also tribute funds, there are federations in every city in the country. And there you give to a tribute fund to the federation of your city, which goes to help our people all over the world. Or you might keep a pushki in your home. Now, this one was Rabbi Light's, and I thought it was very beautiful. And I said to him, now how do you decide what you do with the money that comes out of here? He said, well, perhaps on a special occasion. We will open it up, count it, and then we'll decide where we're going to give it. We'll divide it between many different types of organizations or groups. He said, maybe if it's a bar mitzvah or a special occasion. But every day, they drop something in the pushki. And I'm sure that if you've been in the delicatessen or in the kosher butcher, you have seen many of these standing in a row. Now this one, it happened to belong to our children. You can hear it's kind of full already. And Elise said she has taught her children, as young as they are, that their responsibility is, if a grandparent or somebody gives them some money, they must put some in the pushki. This is for the Jewish National Fund, which works in Israel. We always think of them as planting trees. This is for the youth group of the Orthodox. This one, you see, they're all for different groups, Torah Fund residence halls. And these are all available. This one, I happened to see in the gift shop of the synagogue yesterday. Isn't this interesting? This was hand-painted by an artist. And I think that is really very beautiful. That's something special. And it has to do with a very intrinsic life of Judaism, of giving, of righteousness, that these are all something that are together. When we read Maimonides or the great thinkers of Jewish life, we understand that our obligation and our responsibility is tied in with righteousness and giving. And so I hope that you'll remember something about the pushkis, but also next time you're going to make a traditional dinner, when you invite aunt and uncle over who haven't been there in such a long time, come on, make a real traditional dinner with a little tang and a little twist, because I think that this chicken with the Dijon mustard sauce is absolutely wonderful, and the potato covering it. And here we have a noodle kugel made with the apple butter that is wonderful. Here's our party broccoli, and right here are our wonderful kichel. So all of these together will then bring forth to you a delicious traditional dinner that perhaps you haven't done in a long time. Give it a chance. It's fun. And you know what? Call everybody up and invite them over. And invite them as a part of your mishpacha to come to a truly traditional dinner. Shalom.